For marrying the man my dad mocked after I returned his trust papers? I used to think my dad was overprotective until I realized he treated me less like a daughter and more like a signature he expected to own. I'm Jessica, 32, and by the time I got engaged to Nathan, I was living a pretty ordinary adult life in a small rented apartment, working full-time, paying my own bills, and still somehow feeling like a kid whenever my father said my name in that quiet, disappointed voice. Nathan was 34, steady in a way I had never known growing up, and our apartment was nothing special. Second-hand shelves, mismatched mugs, a tiny kitchen table that wobbled unless you shoved a folded napkin under one leg. One stubborn plant by the window that we kept forgetting to water and somehow refused to die. That apartment felt more like home than any room my father had ever paid for. My father, Richard, built his whole life around being respected. Not loved necessarily. Respected. People stood straighter when he walked into a room. Relatives laughed harder at his jokes than they needed to. Servers remembered his name. Board members shook his hand with both of theirs. At family dinners, he could turn a conversation with one look, and everyone acted like that was normal. In my family, money was never just money. It was a leash with nicer packaging. If Dad paid for something, it came with invisible strings that somehow tightened right when you needed room to breathe. He paid for school, then reminded me which classes made the family look serious. He helped a cousin after a divorce, then brought it up every Thanksgiving like it was a public service announcement. He gave my mother, Marianne, beautiful jewelry, and then used the receipt as proof that she had nothing to complain about. My mother's favorite sentence was, "Don't make your father look bad." Not, "Your father shouldn't have said that." Not, "You don't deserve to be spoken to that way." Just, "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." For a long time I believed that was love in our family. You stayed quiet. You smiled through comments that made your stomach twist. You accepted gifts you didn't ask for because refusing them caused more drama than taking them. You learned which version of yourself caused the least trouble. Then I met Nathan. He didn't come from money, but he also didn't come into my life acting impressed by it. That bothered my father from the beginning. The first time I brought Nathan to dinner, Dad looked him over the way he looked over a contractor he expected to disappoint him. Nathan wore a clean button-down, shook his hand and said, "Thank you for having me." My father smiled with his mouth only. "So Nathan," he said, cutting into his steak, "what exactly do you do?" "I work in financial compliance," Nathan said. "Mostly review and internal controls." Dad's fork paused for half a second. Then he said, "That sounds very practical." Anyone else might have heard that as neutral. I knew my father. Practical meant plain. Useful but not impressive. The kind of thing you kept in a drawer. Nathan just nodded. "It can be." Dad waited for him to elaborate, to brag, to try to prove himself. Nathan didn't. He reached for his water and asked my mother about the soup recipe. My mother blinked like no one had asked her an actual question in years. After dinner, Dad pulled me aside near the hallway table where my mother kept framed family photos arranged by importance. "He seems decent," he said. That was not a compliment either. "He is decent," I said. Dad adjusted one of his cuff links. "Decent is fine for dinner. Marriage requires more than decent." "We're dating, Dad." No one said anything about marriage. He gave me that look. The one that made me feel 12 years old and underdressed. I know when something is moving in the wrong direction. At the time, I told myself he was just being difficult. He had never liked any man I dated. One was too ambitious. One was too relaxed. One came from unstable people, which meant his parents had divorced. I thought Nathan would grow on him because Nathan was respectful, dependable, and not interested in family drama. I was wrong. Nathan's calm made Dad worse. At birthdays, Dad would ask Nathan questions that sounded harmless until you heard the edge under them. "Do you rent because you prefer flexibility? Or because buying is unrealistic? Do people in your line of work usually move up? Or is it more of a ceiling position? Jessica is used to a certain standard. Have you thought about what that means?" Nathan never snapped. He would answer plainly and then change the subject. Sometimes he squeezed my knee under the table, not to silence me, but to remind me I didn't have to spend my whole evening defending him. Once, after Dad made a comment about men who enjoy being close to established families, Nathan set his fork down and said, "I don't need your approval, Richard. I was hoping for basic respect." The table went quiet. Dad smiled. "Respect is earned." Nathan looked right at him. "Then stop spending money like it buys you some." My cousin Lauren choked on her water. Uncle Martin, my father's brother-in-law and professional echo, muttered, "Well, that's bold." I should have known then that Dad would never forgive Nathan for saying what everyone else swallowed. When Nathan proposed, he did it in our apartment after a rainy grocery run. I was wearing socks that didn't match. He had bought grocery store flowers and hidden the ring behind the bag of coffee filters because he knew I would find it there first. I cried into his sweatshirt. He laughed and cried too. It was small and clumsy and perfect. 2 nights later we told my parents. My mother smiled too quickly. "Oh, Jessica." My father didn't stand up. He looked from the ring to Nathan, then back to me. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked. Nathan said, "A while." Dad leaned back. "And what exactly is the plan after the wedding?" I felt Nathan's hand under the table, warm and steady. "The plan," I said carefully, "is to build a life together." Uncle Martin, who had shown up uninvited because he always appeared when he smelled expensive wine, gave a little laugh. "Feelings as a financial plan. That's modern." "Martin," my mother said softly, but she didn't really mean stop. She meant don't make it obvious. Dad looked at me like I had announced I was joining a cult. "Marriage is hard enough," he said, "without marrying beneath your options." The room went still. Nathan's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. I said, "Don't talk about him like that." Dad's eyebrows lifted. "I'm talking about your future." "No," I said. "You're insulting the man I'm going to marry." My mother reached for my hand. "Honey, your father only wants to know you'll be taken care of." I pulled my hand back. "Then why does he keep threatening to take things away?" Dad's face changed. "Not much. Just enough." After dessert, he asked me to step into his study. I hated that room. It smelled like leather, old paper, and decisions I was never allowed to question. He closed the door behind us. "You're confusing defiance with maturity," he said. "No, I'm finally learning the difference between help and control." He gave a short laugh. "That sounds like something he taught you to say." "That's the problem, Dad. You think any thought I have that doesn't benefit you must belong to someone else." His eyes went cold. "You can have him or you can have this family," he said. "You won't have both." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood there and felt something in me shift, not break. Breaking is loud. This was quieter. More like a lock turning. The next morning he texted me. "I hope you heard me clearly last night. Trust access, wedding support, family backing, all of it depends on you making adult decisions." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I took a screenshot. That was the first one. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning not to be lied about. Over the next few weeks, the messages piled up. Dad sent emails with subject lines like reality and "before you make a permanent mistake." My mother left voicemails that started with concern and slowly became reputation management. "Jessica, sweetheart, your father is hurt. This isn't the time to prove a point. People are asking questions. We just want you to come home and talk like a family." Come home meant come alone. Talk like a family meant let Dad speak until I apologized. In the family group text, relatives reacted to his vague posts about watching someone you love be led away, with thumbs up emojis and little prayer hands. No one asked me what happened. No one called Nathan. Uncle Martin sent one message directly to me. "You'll understand when love starts costing real money." I screenshotted that too. Nathan knew some of it. Not all. I didn't want every evening to become a report on my father's latest cruelty. I didn't want Nathan to feel guilty for being loved by me. So I created a folder in my email called Receipts, which felt dramatic, then changed it to Wedding Documents, which felt boring enough to survive a subpoena. I forwarded voicemails there. I printed the worst texts. I saved envelopes. Then Dad moved from threats to sabotage. Our wedding was already modest by my family's standards, but Dad had insisted months earlier on paying for the rehearsal dinner and a small brunch the morning after. I hadn't wanted him to. My mother said refusing would hurt him. Dad said he wanted to contribute like a father. 3 weeks before the wedding, the venue coordinator called me sounding uncomfortable. "Hi, Jessica. I'm sorry to bother you. We just need to confirm who is authorized to make changes to the private dining room reservation." "My fiancé and I are," I said. There was a pause. "Of course. We received an email from your father's office asking us to adjust the seating plan and remove Nathan from the family brunch list until further notice." I sat down on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry," I said. "Remove the groom?" The coordinator's voice dropped. "That's why I called." A few minutes later, Lauren texted me. "Don't shoot the messenger. You need to see this." She forwarded an email chain. Dad had written to my mother, Uncle Martin, Lauren's mother, and some family assistant I barely knew. "Please keep Nathan's name off the private brunch list until Jessica comes to her senses. Family-only standards should apply. Let her feel the consequences without making a scene." Below it, Uncle Martin had replied, "Sensible. She needs to understand what she's trading down for." My mother had not replied. Somehow that hurt worse. I printed the chain and put it in the folder. When I confronted my mother, she sounded tired before I even finished speaking. "Jessica, your father is trying to slow things down. He tried to remove my fiancé from a wedding event. It was just a brunch. It was our brunch. You know how your father gets when he's scared." "Mom, he isn't scared. He's controlling," she whispered. "Please don't make him your enemy." I remember looking at our kitchen sink while she said that. There were 2 coffee cups in it, one with a lipstick mark and one with a tea bag still floating because Nathan forgot tea bags existed after he drank the tea. It was such an ordinary little mess, and I suddenly wanted to protect it with my whole body. "He made that choice," I said. The rehearsal dinner was held in a private dining room with heavy curtains, printed place cards, and waiters who moved like they had been trained not to hear family disasters. Nathan and I arrived together. My father had not spoken to me in 4 days except to send one final email that said, "Think very carefully about tomorrow." I had thought very carefully. The table was long enough that people could avoid eye contact professionally. My mother sat near Dad, twisting her wedding ring. Uncle Martin was already halfway through a glass of wine and smiling like he had bought a ticket to something. Nathan leaned toward me and murmured, "We can leave any time." "I know," I said. Dad stood before dessert. At first, his toast sounded normal. Polished. Warm if you didn't know him. "Marriage is a serious institution," he began. "It requires loyalty, sacrifice, and an understanding that family is not something you discard when something shinier appears." My stomach tightened. Nathan put his hand over mine. Dad continued, "As a father, I have always tried to provide my daughter with every advantage. Education, stability, protection. But there comes a point when a parent must stop funding choices that are reckless." A fork touched a plate too loudly. Someone coughed. He looked directly at Nathan. "You may be good enough for a cheap honeymoon," he said, "but not for my family." My mother closed her eyes. Uncle Martin looked down at his lap, smiling. Dad placed a folder on the table. "Jessica, as of tonight, there will be no trust access. No inheritance guarantees. No family-backed wedding support. Love does not pay bills. When reality arrives, I hope you'll still know where home is." For 1 second I heard nothing. Not the room, not the plates, not my own breathing. Then I stood. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. I opened my purse and took out the family credit card I had carried for emergencies since I was 21. I had almost cut it up that morning, then decided returning it whole would make a better point. I placed it on top of his folder. Then I added the envelope with copies of trust paperwork his office had sent me 2 days earlier, the ones I was apparently supposed to sign like a promise that I would behave. "Then keep it," I said. "I won't let you put a price tag on my marriage." Dad's face tightened. "Sit down." "No. Jessica." I looked at my mother. She stared at the tablecloth. Nathan stood beside me, but he didn't pull me away. He let the choice be mine. I said, "Enjoy the dinner." Then we left. I made it all the way to the car before I cried. Not pretty crying either. The kind where your breath catches and you're angry that your body is giving someone else proof they hurt you. Nathan sat in the driver's seat and waited. He didn't say, I told you so. He didn't say, forget them. He just took my hand and said, I'm proud of you. That made me cry harder. The next day our florist called. Jessica, I'm so sorry. The payment method on file was declined, and we were told all future invoices need to be redirected. Then the caterer. Then the brunch venue. My father had timed it perfectly. He didn't cancel the wedding. He made it financially embarrassing and waited for me to crawl back. Instead, Nathan and I sat at our kitchen table with a laptop, a notepad, and grocery store sushi between us. We cut the guest list. We canceled the formal brunch and replaced it with coffee and bagels at our apartment for anyone who actually wanted to celebrate us. We simplified the flowers. 2 of Nathan's friends helped set up chairs. Lauren texted me, I'm coming. I don't care what anyone says. I returned every conditional gift by certified mail. Crystal bowl from my parents? Returned. Check from Uncle Martin with for when you come to your senses written on the memo line? Returned. A necklace from my mother that she left in my mailbox after the rehearsal dinner? Returned, though that one made me sit in my car for 10 minutes before I could drive away from the post office. I married Nathan on a sunny afternoon with fewer people than planned and more peace than I expected. My father didn't come. My mother didn't come either. She sent a text that morning. I love you, but I cannot reward this kind of division. I hope you understand someday. I didn't answer. Lauren sat in the second row and cried openly. Nathan's mother hugged me so tightly after the ceremony that I almost broke down again. At the apartment brunch the next morning, people spilled coffee on the counter, someone brought too many bagels, and our stubborn plant got knocked sideways and had to be repotted in a mixing bowl for the day. It wasn't the wedding my father wanted to control. That made it the first family event that felt like mine. For a few weeks, Nathan and I lived quietly. Not perfectly. Peace after chaos can feel suspicious at first. I kept checking my phone like my father might jump out of it. Bills were tighter. We skipped restaurants. We watched old movies on the couch and ate pasta with Jared sauce because it was cheap and fast. Then the smear campaign started. Aunt Diane sent a message saying she was concerned about isolation. Uncle Martin told 2 relatives Nathan had separated me from my support system. Someone added me to a family group chat by mistake, and I watched 3 people discuss whether Nathan had pushed me to cut off my parents. My mother left another voicemail. Jessica, your father is devastated. He barely sleeps. Whatever Nathan is telling you, please remember who raised you. He's turning you against people who love you. I saved it. Dad emailed me 2 days later. You are embarrassing yourself. Men like him build careers by sniffing around families they don't belong to. When he is done using you, don't expect the door to remain open. I read that line 3 times. Men like him build careers by sniffing around families they don't belong to. It was too specific. Dad had insulted Nathan's income, his background, his apartment, his family. But this was different. It sounded less like snobbery and more like fear. That night, Nathan was rinsing dishes while I sat at the table with the printed email in front of me. Can I ask you something? I said. He turned off the water. Always. Has my father ever contacted you directly? Nathan dried his hands slowly. When? That's a yes. He came to the table and sat down. A few weeks before the rehearsal dinner, he said. He called me. My skin went cold. You didn't tell me. I know. What did he say? Nathan rubbed his thumb along the edge of the table. At first, normal father stuff. He said marriage was serious. He said you were used to certain things. Then it got strange. Strange how? He told me smart men understand professional boundaries. He said getting close to the wrong family could damage a career if people thought there was a conflict. I stared at him. Nathan looked miserable. He didn't sound like a father asking about his daughter. He sounded like a man worried about a file. A file. I didn't want to bring work into our relationship. Nathan. He leaned back and exhaled. I can't discuss confidential details. You know that. I'm not asking for details. I'm asking why my father is talking about your career like he knows something I don't. Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. Lauren, call me when you can. It's about the charity dinner. My family's annual charity dinner was Dad's favorite night of the year. It was part fundraiser, part reputation bath. He stood under soft lighting, talked about service, and accepted applause from people who liked writing checks in rooms where their names were spelled correctly. I called Lauren. "He's going to mention you," she said. I closed my eyes. "In the speech. He's not saying your name in the draft I saw, but everyone will know. It's all about family loyalty and people forgetting where they came from." "Of course it is. There's something else." Her voice dropped. I heard him arguing with Evelyn. Evelyn was the family attorney and longtime advisor. She had been around so long that half the family treated her like furniture that carried a law degree. "What about?" I asked. "Your dad asked whether Nathan could be removed from anything connected to the foundation review." I stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. "Foundation review?" "That's what he said." Evelyn told him it wasn't that simple. He said Nathan had a personal agenda now. She said a disclosed conflict wasn't the same thing as misconduct. My mouth went dry. Nathan looked at me from across the table. I said to Lauren, "Can you send me anything you have? I only have the dinner invitation list and a forwarded chain where your dad mentions controlling the narrative before the donor announcement. But just be careful. He's not acting like a mad father. He's acting cornered." After we hung up, I turned to Nathan. He already knew what I was going to ask. His voice was quiet. "My firm was brought in to assist with an independent review of several charitable foundations. One of them is connected to your family." I sat back down. "When did you know?" "After we were already serious. I disclosed the connection internally as soon as I realized. I stepped away from direct handling on anything involving your father's foundation. But you knew enough to know there was a problem." He didn't answer right away. "Nathan, I know enough to understand why your father may feel threatened," he said carefully. "That's all I can say." I wanted to be angry at him for keeping it from me. For about 10 seconds I was. Then I looked at his face and saw how hard he had been trying not to put me in the middle of something I didn't choose. "You should have told me he called you," I said. "Yes," he said. "No excuses. I should have." "Why didn't you?" "Because I didn't want our marriage used as evidence by either side. Not by him. Not by my firm. Not by anyone. And I didn't want you wondering if I married you with one eye on your family's records." I almost laughed because it was such a painfully Nathan answer. Ethical even when it made things harder. "Did you?" I asked, though I already knew. He looked hurt, but he answered, "No. I married you because you steal my side of the blanket and talk to dying houseplants like they're employees you're disappointed in." I looked toward the window. The plant leaned crookedly in its pot like it was listening. "Good," I said. "Because that plant needs management." We both laughed, but it didn't last. The review had flagged irregular donor commitments, vague transfers, and family expenses that had no business sitting near charitable records. Nathan would not tell me specifics. He would not show me documents. He would not even confirm which line items were under scrutiny. At first that frustrated me so much I wanted to shake him. Then I realized his refusal was the whole point. My father had spent months painting Nathan as an opportunist. Nathan's best defense was not to become one. So I stopped asking about the foundation records. "I don't need his files," I told Nathan. "I have my father's words." I made a cleaner folder. Printed screenshots, emails, voicemail transcripts, the venue message about removing Nathan, the brunch email Lauren had forwarded, my father's texts about trust access and inheritance, certified mail receipts for returned gifts, a copy of the family credit card cancellation confirmation. I also made an appointment with Evelyn. Her office was aggressively neutral. Beige chairs, glass table, no family photos. She greeted me with the calm expression of a woman who had survived rich people's emergencies for decades. "Jessica," she said, "I wondered when you would come in." That told me plenty. "I'm not here for confidential foundation information," I said. "I don't want anything I'm not allowed to have." "Good. I want to know what my father can legally say about me and my husband, and what I'm allowed to say back." Evelyn folded her hands. "Your father can have opinions. He cannot fabricate a record and expect no one to respond. He's telling people Nathan manipulated me." "Did he?" "No. Then keep proof of your independent decisions. I slid copies across the table. She read silently. Her face barely moved, but I saw her pause at the email about Nathan sniffing around families. Then again at the brunch chain. Finally she said, "Do not publish anything online. Do not make accusations about foundation records you have not personally seen. Do not speak for your husband's firm." I wasn't planning to. What are you planning? I looked at the folder. My father is going to stand at that charity dinner and make himself the victim. I'm going to let him be specific enough to be answered. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "If you attend, stay factual. Will you be there?" "Yes." "Will you lie for him?" Her eyes met mine. "No." That was not exactly comfort, but it was something I could use. The charity dinner was 4 months after my wedding. Nathan and I almost didn't go. The invitation had been sent to Jessica and Guest, which was so petty I laughed when I opened it. Nathan held the card and said, "Guest is thinking about wearing the blue suit. Guest looks good in the blue suit. Guest also thinks we can stay home and order Thai food." I wanted to. I really did. But Lauren had sent me the seating chart, and I knew Dad had put us close enough to be seen but far enough to be controlled. He wanted me in the room. He wanted my silence as decoration. So we went. The dinner was held in a hotel ballroom with white tablecloths, soft gold lighting, and enormous floral arrangements that blocked half the conversations. A string quartet played near the entrance. Donors stood in clusters holding drinks and pretending they didn't compare name tags. My mother saw me first. She wore a pale dress and the same worried smile she used when she wanted everyone to behave. Her eyes moved to Nathan, then away. "Jessica," she said, "I'm glad you came." "Are you?" Her smile trembled. "This isn't the place." "It never is." Nathan said hello politely. My mother gave him a nod that barely counted as one. Uncle Martin appeared with a drink in his hand and a grin he should have retired years ago. "Well," he said, looking Nathan over, "love must be paying better than we thought." I smiled. "Funny. I've watched grown men build entire reputations on other people staying quiet." His grin faded. Nathan leaned close and whispered, "That was sharp." I filed the edges myself. Across the room, Dad was surrounded by board members. He looked exactly the way he liked to look. Controlled, generous, untouchable. Evelyn stood nearby, speaking to Miles, one of the foundation board members. Miles had always been friendly to me in that distant adult way, the kind where he remembered birthdays but not feelings. When Dad saw Nathan, something flickered in his face. Not disgust. Fear. Then it was gone. Dinner moved slowly. Salads. Speeches from smaller donors. A short video about grant recipients. My mother barely ate. Uncle Martin laughed too loudly at the table next to ours. Relatives glanced at me and then looked away. A few gave tight smiles like I was a scandal they had been warned not to touch. Nathan kept his hand on my knee under the table. "Are you okay?" he asked. "No," I said. "But I'm clear." Dad took the podium after the main course. He began with gratitude, of course. He thanked donors, partners, board members, volunteers. His voice was warm and practiced. People leaned in because he knew how to make a room feel included in his goodness. Then the speech shifted. "Family," he said, "is the first foundation most of us ever know. It teaches us loyalty before the world teaches us ambition. It teaches us sacrifice before the world teaches us appetite." I felt Nathan's hand tighten slightly. Dad continued, "But there are moments when people mistake independence for wisdom, when really they are being led away from everyone who protected them. They forget the hands that lifted them. They mistake criticism for cruelty. They mistake concern for control." A few heads turned toward me. My mother stared at her plate. Dad's voice softened in that fake pained way he used when he wanted credit for suffering beautifully. "As a parent, all you can do is protect your child as long as they allow you to. And when outside influences enter, sometimes all you can do is step back and let consequences teach what love could not." Uncle Martin murmured loudly, "Amen to that." Nathan bent toward me. "Are you sure?" I kept my eyes on my father. "Yes." I wanted Dad to finish. Liars are easier to expose when they think they have the room. He took a breath and delivered the line I had been waiting for. All I ever did was protect my daughter. I stood. The room didn't go silent all at once. Silence moves in waves. First my table. Then the tables nearest us. Then the podium, where Dad stopped mid-breath and looked at me like I had broken a law. I picked up the folder from the chair beside me and walked to the front. My legs felt unsteady, but my voice came out clear. Since we're talking about family loyalty, I said, let's talk about what you actually said when there wasn't a microphone. Dad's smile stayed in place, but his eyes hardened. Jessica, he said quietly, sit down. No. That one word carried across the room better than I expected. I placed the folder on the table in front of Miles and Evelyn, not in front of my father. That mattered. Dad expected everything to be addressed to him. I wanted witnesses. These are messages my father sent me before my wedding, I said. Texts, emails, and voicemails. They are mine. They are not confidential foundation records. They are not Nathan's work product. They are my father's words. Miles looked at Evelyn. Evelyn looked at the folder but did not stop me. Dad laughed softly. This is neither the time nor the place for a family tantrum. I opened the folder. No trust. No support. No family backing unless you make adult decisions. I read. That was from my father after I refused to end my engagement. Someone gasped softly. I turned a page. You can have him or you can have this family. You won't have both. My mother's face went pale. Dad said, private family messages taken out of context. Here's more context, I said. I read from the email chain Lauren had sent me. Please keep Nathan's name off the private brunch list until Jessica comes to her senses. Family-only standards should apply. Let her feel the consequences without making a scene. Uncle Martin suddenly became very interested in his water glass. I looked at the room, not at Dad. After he withdrew wedding support, vendors started calling me asking who was responsible for payment. Nathan and I paid what we could, canceled what we couldn't, and got married anyway. I returned every gift that came with conditions. I returned the family credit card. I did not ask for money. I did not ask for access. I asked to marry without being threatened. Dad stepped away from the podium. That is enough. No, I said. You had months to make me look unstable and Nathan look predatory. You don't get to perform protection now. Evelyn spoke for the first time. Richard, I would let her finish. The room shifted. Not dramatically. No one shouted. But I saw it. Dad saw it too. The safest person in the room to obey was no longer obvious. I picked up the email with the sentence that had started everything. My father wrote, men like him build careers by sniffing around families they don't belong to. At the time I wondered why that sounded less like classism and more like professional fear. Dad's face changed. I looked at Miles. Before my father ever called Nathan a nobody, he knew Nathan had disclosed a connection to an independent review involving this foundation. Nathan stepped away from direct handling because that is what ethical people do when there may be a conflict. My father knew that. He still tried to paint him as a social climber before anyone could take his integrity seriously. A low murmur moved through the room. Dad snapped. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know what I'm allowed to know, I said. I know my father asked whether Nathan could be removed from anything connected to the foundation review. I know he talked about controlling the narrative before tonight's donor announcement. And I know he tried to destroy my marriage before the review made him nervous in public. Miles turned to Evelyn. Is there an independent review connected to the foundation? He asked. Evelyn's answer was careful. There is a review process involving certain records and commitments. Dad said. Evelyn. She didn't look at him. I'm not here to interpret family feelings. I'm here because records matter. Miles faced Dad. Richard, before this dinner continues, I need a direct answer. Are the concerns real? Dad's mouth opened. For once, no polished sentence came out. My mother stood so quickly her chair hit the table behind her. Richard, she said, and her voice shook. What did you hide from me? He looked furious with her. Not ashamed. Furious that she had asked in front of people. Marianne, sit down. She didn't. That was the first time I had ever seen my mother disobey him in public. I wish I could say it healed something instantly. It didn't. It was too late for that kind of magic. But it cracked the performance, and once the performance cracked, the whole room could see the structure underneath. Uncle Martin said nothing. The relatives who had mocked me looked anywhere except my face. A board member whispered to another. Someone from the hotel staff hovered near the back wall, pretending not to listen. Dad tried one more time. My daughter is emotional. She has been under pressure. I looked at him, and the anger in me went still. You didn't lose a daughter because I got married, I said. You lost control because I stopped being afraid of you. No one spoke. Then Miles closed the folder gently. We'll need to pause the donor announcement, he said. No public commitments continue until there is an independent follow-up. Dad stared at him. You're making a mistake. Miles's expression didn't move. Then the review will show that. That was the punishment my father understood. Not yelling. Not tears. A pause. Process he did not control. People he could not charm all at once. Nathan came to stand beside me. He didn't touch the folder. He didn't say a word about the foundation. He just stood there, calm and solid, while my father looked at him like he finally understood that quiet was not the same as weak. Dad stepped closer to Nathan and lowered his voice, but I heard him. You can stop this from becoming ugly. Nathan said, No, I can't. And I wouldn't. That was the moment from the hook. My father, who had called him a nobody, standing at his own charity dinner and begging him without using the word beg. Nathan didn't save the family name. He didn't ruin it either. He simply refused to help bury what needed daylight. We left before dessert. In the car, my hands shook so badly I couldn't buckle my seatbelt on the first try. Nathan reached over, helped me, then rested his forehead against the steering wheel for a second. You okay? I asked. No, he said. You. No. Then we both laughed, not because it was funny, but because our bodies didn't know where else to put the adrenaline. The aftermath was not clean. No one was arrested that night. My father did not become bankrupt by breakfast. The foundation didn't collapse in one dramatic headline. Real consequences move slower than gossip. But the donor announcement was paused. The board requested a formal independent follow-up. 2 relatives who had repeated Dad's version of the story sent me awkward texts that used phrases like misunderstood and only heard one side. Uncle Martin did not apologize, but he stopped posting quotes about loyalty in the family chat. My mother called 3 days later. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was quiet. Jessica, I don't know what to say yet. I should have asked more questions. I should have protected you from some things. I'm not asking you to call back tonight. I just wanted you to know I heard you. I saved that too, but in a different folder. Dad waited 6 days. His email had no apology in the subject line. Just meeting. Jessica, we need to settle this privately. Bring Nathan if you must. Evelyn can attend if that makes you feel more comfortable. It is time to move forward as a family. Dad, if that makes you feel more comfortable. Even cornered, he made boundaries sound like childish accessories. I wrote back. I will meet in Evelyn's office. Nathan will attend. You will not speak to either of us alone. I am not meeting you in a room where you get to rewrite what happened. He replied 4 hours later. Fine. The meeting took place the following week. Evelyn's office looked exactly the same. Beige chairs. Glass table. No softness anywhere. Dad arrived in a dark suit. My mother came with him, which surprised me. She looked smaller than usual, not physically, but in the way people look when they have run out of roles to hide inside. Nathan sat beside me. I had my folder, though I didn't open it. Evelyn began. This meeting is about personal boundaries, not foundation records. Those matters are proceeding separately. Dad's jaw tightened. Understood. He looked at me. I regret that things became public. I almost smiled. That's not an apology. His eyes flashed, but he controlled it. I regret my words at the rehearsal dinner. Which words? Jessica, my mother whispered. No, I said, still looking at Dad. Which words? He hated that. I could see it. Specificity had never been his friend. After a long pause, he said, I should not have said Nathan was not good enough for the family. Nathan said nothing. I said, and Dad looked at him. I should not have interfered with wedding events and threatened my trust access? That was. Evelyn said, Richard. He swallowed whatever excuse he had prepared. I should not have used financial matters to pressure you. It was not warm. It was not tearful. It was not the apology a daughter dreams of from her father. But it was the first time I had ever heard him name what he did without dressing it up as protection. Then he reached into his briefcase and slid an envelope across the table. I'm prepared to restore your trust access. No conditions. I didn't touch it. There are always conditions with you. Not this time. I'm not taking back the leash just because you polished it. My mother flinched. Dad's face went red. That is an unfair characterization. No. It's an accurate pattern. Nathan's hand rested near mine on the table, not touching, just there. I continued. Here are my terms. You don't insult Nathan. Not to me, not to family, not through jokes you pretend aren't insults. You don't use inheritance, trusts, gifts, or family events to control access to me. You don't discuss me as if I've been manipulated because I made a choice you dislike. If you want any relationship with me, you apologize directly and you behave differently after the apology. Dad stared at me like he was trying to find the daughter who would have softened that sentence for him. She wasn't in the room. I turned to my mother. And you? Her eyes filled instantly. I know, she said. I need you to stop acting like silence is neutral. It isn't. You watched him humiliate my husband. You watched him threaten me. You told me not to make him my enemy instead of telling him not to hurt me. A tear slipped down her cheek. I was trying to keep the family together. You were keeping him comfortable. She covered her mouth. I didn't enjoy saying it. That surprised me. Before the meeting, I thought it would feel satisfying to finally put words to her part in it. It didn't. It felt necessary and sad. Dad said, Your mother doesn't deserve that. My mother can answer for herself. The room went quiet. My mother lowered her hand. She's right, she said. Dad looked at her like she had betrayed him. She looked back at him, tired and shaking. She is. Again, it did not fix us. But it was another crack in the old structure. I stood before Dad could turn the meeting into a negotiation. I'm not ready for dinners. I'm not ready for holidays. I'm not ready for phone calls where we pretend this was a misunderstanding. If I decide to meet again, it will be because you've shown change, not because you offered money. Dad's voice was low. You would really walk away from your family over this? I looked at him for a long moment. No, I said. I walked away from being owned. You're the one who keeps confusing the two. Nathan and I left together. Outside, the air felt cold and ordinary. Cars passed. Someone argued into a phone near the curb. A delivery driver balanced a stack of boxes against his hip. The world did not know that I had just refused a trust fund, set terms with my parents, and walked out before my father could dismiss me. That was almost funny. Freedom should come with music or dramatic weather. Mine came with traffic noise and Nathan asking, Thai food? I laughed. Please. We went home to our small apartment, changed into sweatpants, and ate takeout at the wobbly kitchen table. The stubborn plant sat by the window, still tilted from its near-death experience after the wedding brunch. Nathan raised his carton of noodles toward it. To resilience, he said. That plant is surviving out of spite. So are we a little. I leaned back in my chair and looked around. The shelves were still second-hand. The mug still didn't match. The table still needed the folded napkin under one leg. Nothing about it looked impressive. But no one had bought my seat there. No one could remove Nathan from the guest list. No one could threaten to take it away unless I performed gratitude on command. For the first time, I understood that peace can look small from the outside and still be the biggest thing you own. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.